evening and welcome to another episode of Dan and Jesse on Talk Football. We're going to be discussing my favourite subject, Liverpool Football Club, their season, what's happened, the transfer window, the cups, the ups, the downs, missing out on the Premier League, and where do we think things are going to go in the future? And with that, you've got me, Dan, you've got Jesse. Can already see we've got 3 people watching live. We really appreciate you coming in. If you can stick a like on there for us, put a comment in and get involved in the chat. And we just added a 4th there as well. Thanks very much for joining us. Right, Jesse, so probably just straight off the bat, we'll get right into it. How do you think Liverpool's season went?
Well, and I don't think it went well just because of where you guys ended up and the fact that you guys were in 4 competitions until the end of the day, taking Man City down to the wire, losing out by 1 point in the league. And then the inevitable happens. Real Madrid does what Real Madrid does and, pips you guys to the Champions League title. The reason why I think that Liverpool had such a good league is expectations from certainly certain fan bases, but certain fans as well. I know there's a lot of Liverpool fans out there who say, well, we knew Liverpool would be back. It was just the injuries last season. That's the reason why we had the season we had last season. A lot of us didn't see it that way. I didn't see it that way either. So I thought Liverpool were going to do well. I didn't see it that way. I thought Liverpool were going to have a market improvement. I thought you guys would be revitalized. I thought you would be rejuvenated. But I certainly didn't see you guys coming back in the Liverpool of old from the past 2-3 years and going for all 4 trophies. Almost matching, actually improving upon in certain ways what the City did last season. Because remember, City were in that situation where it was 4 weeks ago and we were saying they're on for the quad. And in 2 weeks, the quad was off, the Champions League was off, everything was off. So it changes that quick. I mean, football comes at you fast.
It certainly does. And for me, I'll go one further than being well. I thought the season was very good. Tinged with some disappointment, bittersweet at the end, obviously, by not winning the Champions League. The Premier League was a game too far, and we'll go in a little bit later as to where I felt that was lost and why it was lost. But we'll go into that with Jesse, give your opinion on that one. But for me, the bit that surprised me, where you've mentioned that you thought some fan bases thought that Liverpool wouldn't be where they were, the bit that surprised me wasn't going to the Champions League final. I very much expect Liverpool to be pushing deep into the Champions League every single season. If there's no major sorts of issues with injuries and losing players and things like that which are unpredictable, I expect Liverpool to be back next season looking at trying to win a Champions League again. I think anyone would probably agree that is a reasonable situation to happen, and I think Liverpool will be challenging for the title. But what really surprised me was winning 2 domestic trophies. That was the biggest surprise for me. As a fan, I'll quite happily sit there and tell you, I watch every game. Jesse knows this. I watch every single match. I watched all 63 games this season, plus all the other football. I'll drink footballing. I used to just sit and watch my League Cup and FA Cup games on my phone while I'm doing some work or doing something else. Because for me, it was like watching the youth team. I wasn't watching Liverpool. I was watching Elijah Dixon-Bonner. I was watching Takumi Minamino. I was watching Quivine Kelleher in that. I was watching our 2nd and 3rd string playing. And, I have an interest. I'll always watch. But, for me, it's I'll take it or I'll leave it situation. But, yeah, that was my biggest surprise, was where we ended up with those 2 trophies. And I felt that once we got there, well, we might as well win them. That was the attitude I thought we had.
What? Yeah, and we kind of had this impression. I remember having this conversation with you either in a WhatsApp chat or in Discord, and I was saying, I don't think Liverpool meant to get there. I really don't. I think that it would have been more of the same from previous seasons. But the fact is, when you put out your youth teams and they take you the 3rd round to the I don't know, round of 16 or whatever that may be, then quarterfinals, semifinals, and once you find yourself in the semifinals, all of a sudden it's game on. You realize you're there, and everything becomes serious. You might as well go for it. You've got maybe 2 more. Did we have 2 legs this year? Because they canceled it last.
You have 2 legs in
Arsenal.
Yeah, against Arsenal, yeah.
That's right. Okay. So, but once you're there in the semifinal, you go for the competition. So if you can accidentally get that far,
yeah,
it's almost like we're accidentally going to win a trophy. Like we're accidentally going to win this trophy that we haven't won before. And I think that's where it gets. I think that's where it gets serious. Just real quick. I think that's where you basically push on and you go, okay, now we can start playing a few more of the starters in this lineup and go for it.
No, I totally agree with you. And when we talk about accidentally ending up in there, I actually think I sent in our WhatsApp group. I think I actually sent quite a bit of a meme of Jurgen Klopp kind of looking befuddled on the line, and the caption underneath of when Jurgen Klopp accidentally wins the League Cup, and that was like the Leicester game, probably before then, because that's how it felt. And you do need to ride your luck sometimes. Liverpool were going out of the League Cup up until Takumi Minamino's goal late on, taking us to extra time. But sometimes you need that little bit of luck. Sometimes you don't get what you deserve. You get more, and that's kind of what happened. I think Liverpool were lucky. We got we won on penalties. In that, we beat an Arsenal team without Mane, without Keita, without Salah. In January to go to the League Cup. We went to the League Cup final. Perhaps one of the greatest 0-0 draws I've ever watched as a Liverpool fan. We rode our luck, so did Chelsea. And it went down to the knife edge of penalty shootout and for a keeper to miss the final penalty. I mean, you can't cut a game any finer than that. I don't think we may never see that kind of a game ever again. Let's put it that way. So once Liverpool had won that trophy, I mean, for me, it was the most important trophy in the world at that point. It was like, we need to win this because we're here. All that hard work, all that effort, all those dreams, all those kind of, excitement levels are for nothing if you don't win it. That they're meaningless if you don't win it. And yeah, so the domestic trophies for me, we had a bit of luck with the draws. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. It's just the way it works. And when you get it, you've got to ride with it, haven't you? So that was where I was. For me, that was my biggest surprise. Was us winning 2 domestic cups. That's where I was my biggest surprise. So with that going on to that there, Jesse, I suppose the best thing to look at in this season was the Premier League situation. Was this a disappointment from Liverpool not to win the Premier League, or was this sort of, were they kind of, could they have done really anything more? I suppose that's the question. Do you think Liverpool could have done anything more? Only losing 2 games.
There's always you can do more, and I've told you this a million times. I've also talked to you about it backstage. I said in the WhatsApp group before the season even started that whoever wins this Premier League will only be able to lose up to 4 games. I don't mean you can lose 4 games. I mean up to 4 games. 1, 2, 3. You can win, or you can lose. Sorry, you can lose 3 games. You can lose up to 4 games, and the fact is that came to pass. And so could you guys have done more? Yes. You could have done more in this way. You guys could have not dropped those results, which you can fill us into, because I can't remember off the top of my head exactly which ones those were.
I'll tell you.
Exactly. And when they happened. But the fact is, it did come to pass. And the fact is, you can't lose. You've got to win somewhere between, I mean, really you have to win 30 games, but you certainly can't lose more than 3. Not with this City team and not with this Liverpool team. So was it a failure at all in the league's respect? No, it wasn't. But you guys certainly could have done things better.
Yeah, and I'll tell you those games. A number of people tried to take a little bit of delight in the fact that Liverpool lost the league when they drew to Tottenham. I disagree with that. Drawing to Tottenham is no disgrace. They're a top 4 club. That they're a team who's beat Manchester City home and away this season. They've had some really good results. They're a good team. People like to bash down Tottenham, and it's only when it suits. They'll bash Tottenham down when it suits. So for me, I didn't think that was the right way to look at it. To expect a team to win 10 games in a row to win the title is unrealistic, and it's an unreasonable expectation to say that that's where it was. Liverpool lost the league from 2 really important games. The game when we played Leicester just before Christmas, and we lost 1-0. We absolutely, unequivocally bossed that game. We were all over them, and we should have scored 3 or 4 goals. But you know what? We didn't. It was our fault. And sometimes a game goes that way for you. You have to expect that in football. You can't win every game. It's not FIFA. You can't win every match. Sometimes football is a cruel game and you don't get what you deserve. And that was one of those days. Brighton at home, we were 2-0 up and we drew 2-2. This was incredibly disappointing for two reasons. Firstly, in the manner of the way that we conceded the first goal. We conceded it from a bit of a fluke. But that's how it works. There's a bit of luck. And that's how it happens. Liverpool have had luck this season. The goal that we scored against Tottenham was Diaz's huge deflection that went to the bottom corner. They come round back and forth. But I think the reason that we didn't win those certain games was because we lost important midfielders and we didn't have a replacement this season. We lost Wijnaldum for the right reasons. We lost Wijnaldum because he wanted too much money. He went for the cash. He went to PSG and look where he is. And that's a different story. So Keita was injured in that game. Oxlade-Chamberlain came on. Oxlade-Chamberlain scored, but we weren't able to control the game. So for me, Liverpool lost that league based on results, which we absolutely should have got in those two games. Either one, Liverpool won the league. But there it is. Yeah. So what can you say?
Honestly, I don't think that there's too many excuses for. I didn't give City the excuse the other day when we had Pat on, when we were talking about City and how they didn't win the Champions League. I didn't give them the excuse. I'm not going to give Liverpool the excuse. I understand the reason that it may have been the cause of why Liverpool didn't pull off those results. But at the same time, I don't give anyone the excuse. And I certainly don't give anyone the excuse when they start talking about players that left 2 years ago. So
he left this season, mate.
Genie?
With this one, because we never replaced him. We never replaced him with a like-for-like player. That's what I mean. We know we brought Thiago in. Thiago's not a Wijnaldum. Naby Keita's not a Wijnaldum. We never replaced him. Someone who's a utility midfielder.
But when did Genie leave?
Genie left. What was it? 20? Yeah, he left before the COVID season, wasn't it?
That's what I'm saying. So
yeah, sorry, man. I misunderstood you. Sorry.
Yeah, I just don't give excuses for things like that because then you have to replace those players. It's
it's no excuse. That's our fault. Yeah. Own it. We own it. It's our fault. It's Liverpool's fault.
So you're saying that's the reason. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely the reason. No excuse. It's the reason. The reason that Liverpool didn't win those games was by not bringing in somebody who was going to do those jobs. We can look at other games and say, well, we didn't have this, say, goal scorer. Tottenham was a game where we didn't have another, someone who could just get that ball in. Bring in some clinical finisher, who could have just got us that extra goal against a low block. We can move on to that, later on talking about transfers, whether or not that might be involved, blah, blah, blah. But let's look at what tangibly that we can see, which was in our control, which is stopping the other team scoring. And we should have done that better and controlled the game better.
When did Harvey get injured as well?
Harvey was injured in the Southampton game. This was in September. Harvey Elliott was injured against Leeds in the September.
So that's another one. So that's another injury there, which you can kind of start to see not the dichotomy, but the archetype was there where you wanted to have these midfielders. And so if Genie goes, you kind of can pretend like Curtis Jones is good enough, but I think Harvey Elliott ultimately is good enough. And I think that you might be able to justify bringing in these talented youth players to fill in those positions. I just wanted to go back to Jamie here. These are back a couple minutes, but I think this is important. Look at City winning 4 in a row, and he's talking about the League Cup. It gave him a springboard. I wanted to ask you about this before we moved on. I didn't want to slow down the conversation. We talked about accidentally getting there. Obviously, the depth was there, so you guys ended up getting there through merit.
Now it is, yeah.
But do you think that winning that Carabao Cup, the League Cup, might have spurred you guys on to look at domestic competitions in a more in a better light? You guys might have looked at the FA Cup and said, hey, no, never mind, we want these. They're important.
No, 100%. I think it becomes quite addictive. Winning a trophy, having a day out to Wembley, the fans, the excitement that builds amongst the fan base, going to Wembley, going to another final, playing a game when everybody else isn't playing. It's, you feel a little bit kind of more buoyed by that experience to say that we're in a final, we're lifting a trophy, listening to other fans call it the Mickey Mouse Trophy and all this kind of stuff. We know that it burns. To call the FA Cup, as I say, the Mickey Mouse Cup is just, whichever. But yeah, the League Cup, I never really had. I mean, I'll honestly tell you, I never really had any respect for it. I didn't. But I can now appreciate the mental boost that it gives to A, a fan base, and B, a team to lift a trophy in February, to then go on for the rest of the season, knowing what it feels like to have won that trophy, to have gone up there, won a competition, and to kind of just, it whets the appetite. It whets that appetite for players. It gives them that extra bounce. It gives them the boost. And that is one element as to why Liverpool, I think, did so well. And another element, I think Jamie actually put it in the comments, was Luis Diaz coming in. That was a very welcome boost in January for Liverpool, to bring someone of such hunger and drive and stuff he does off the ball. That Diaz impact massive helped the squad in January. 100%, Jamie. A player like that, who you can see how much it means. He's landed on his feet at Liverpool, not just on his feet. He's sprinting as soon as he's hit the ground. He's not took any time to settle in. He's done brilliantly, and he's definitely helped push Liverpool forward, not just in goals and assists, but just his general play. He is a threat for every team.
100%.
It is. That's right, Jamie. A cup is always give a team an addictive habit, a hunger to win. Definitely, and as a Liverpool fan, I want us to win it again next season. I want us to go and win it next season as well.
I will say one thing. I know for a fact that Jose and Pep both have a similar mentality when it comes to the League Cup, because it's not uncontested, but it's so early on that you can prioritize games around that. And so I think the only reason why we won the Europa League is because Jose came in his first season and made it a point that we win these trophies. We win the League Cup, and then we push on and we win one more trophy that season, whether it's the Premier League, which we weren't going to win that season, FA Cup, or Europa League. It got to the point where we were in 5th, and he went, okay, so we're going to win this Europa League. And that's where you get Rashford banging in 30-yard screamers against Celta Vigo in the last 5 minutes. And the mentality of the team was really shaped around that, and the team was hungry for it. And I think it's an incredibly important component. Twisted has a question here. Did Liverpool only win the 2 domestic cups because City chose not to prioritize those competitions?
No. Liverpool won them because they beat Chelsea twice. Man City didn't have a say other than the FA Cup game, which was their choice. They made a decision to play a much changed team. Patrick came on the other day, told me Ederson had a knock. That was the reason he didn't play. I wasn't aware of that. I had the opinion that they changed the team quite that way because of it. But if that's the case, no excuses. They had to replace it with Stefan because they didn't have a choice in changing the keeper. So yeah, my opinion was changed from what Patrick had to say. I thought they'd made the decision to take Ederson off to rest him, not because he had an injury. So if he was injured, the situation changes, and ultimately they hadn't got a big enough team to be able to play in all of the competitions. They lost in the League Cup earlier on in the tournament. Chelsea was more than competition enough for Liverpool. Both games are fantastic. Stefan was an LFC fan for the day. That's right. He certainly was, wasn't he? He was. He had Carriers vibes, Disney. God rest him. Our ex-Liverpool player, I can quite happily say,
Stefan's my boy too. He's going to be.
Stefan,
he's number one in the World Cup.
America, isn't he? That's the thing. So no. Yeah, I had the opinion that the FA Cup was basically handed to Liverpool by City, as in to go to the final. But because of what Patrick has had to say to tell me that I didn't realise Ederson had a knock. So in that case, the situation changes. We chose Kraveen Kelleher for the League Cup from start to finish. Went on and won it. They had to step to Stefan. He wasn't good enough, and sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles, isn't it?
I also don't think that City went very easy on West Ham. West Ham knocked out United and then City in the next round. They knocked out both Manchester clubs in respective rounds, I think 4 and 5. I mean, it was West Ham were on smoke at the beginning of the season. So
they were, weren't they? They just seemed to tail off towards the end, didn't they? So I suppose, we can probably, with that, Jesse, was kind of move on to kind of we've done the Premier League, done the League Cup. The FA Cup kind of speaks for itself. They're very kind of similar situations. So kind of going on from there, was there any other than obviously Liverpool coming back to where they were, was there anything about Liverpool that kind of shocked you, kind of the way that they kind of went about their business? Did you see any changes in what they did, this season as opposed to, previous seasons of past?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the main one that sticks out to me is the Diaz deal. So not to go back to the Diaz deal, but I think that's a massive change in what I've seen from Liverpool. Liverpool typically in the past have been willing to shop at a more minute market, bring in kind of the minority players, and obviously not minority, but players from kind of out of the fringes, bring them in.
The players that people don't have on your lips, yeah.
Exactly. But I think that Liverpool does now have a solid tier 1 list of players who are their first and second choice. And if anyone comes in for them at the wrong time, they're willing to move a little bit earlier and pay over the asking price. So I think Liverpool could have gone Diaz this summer. Let's just say they could have gone him for 55 million. Instead, he's going for 63 or whatever. And I think the fact is they're willing to do that, though. And that's a major philosophy change in the way that Liverpool operate. Now, that's not just for any player. When we talk about United, we'll pay 10 million over the odds for a fourth choice at the end of the summer because we just need personnel. Liverpool go in and say, hey, look, Tottenham might actually get this over the line. So let's go in and just take that player. Same thing happened with Vlahovic with Arsenal. Now, Vlahovic, you need to correct me on that. It's Vlahovic, and I know it, but I'm so used to saying Vlahovic. So it's Vlahovic. But the fact is, Juventus were going to wait till summer. I'm 100% certain they were going to wait till summer, and they knew that Vlahovic would have waited. I think that they started getting a little antsy and instead decided to pull the trigger. That's what big clubs do. Big clubs with a lot of money, they go early if they see someone coming in with real intent. So that's the main transfer strategy I've seen change. I think you see that a little bit with Nunez. Not that you guys had to come in big, but if it's a foot race between United and Liverpool, obviously you guys can get him. And you guys also matched us for cash. So forget all that. Neither of our clubs wanted to get into a bidding war.
Because you're being used by the selling club. That's basically it. What
if Real Madrid just in 2 weeks' time goes, you know what, we actually do want a striker, and then comes in with 120 million euros? So take care of it now. Take care of it right now whilst you have the opportunity. Spam risk, that's cool. It's just go in now and get the job done. Get the deal done now. So I think those are two instances though, Dan, where I think I see major transfer philosophy changes.
Yeah, we'll go over the Diaz situation because that's obviously a confirmed situation that's occurred, and I totally agree with you, mate. I as a Liverpool fan, January transfer windows was boring as hell because we don't sign anyone. They're really boring. The last time Liverpool signed a player in January of any real name, it was a Mr. Virgil van Dijk, and that was very exciting. And Liverpool have proven time and time again as an ownership that they will spend the money when the player's the right one to bring in, when they're the person that they absolutely believe in. We've discussed on previous shows talking about the strategy that's in place at Liverpool when it comes to signing players, that this isn't just, on a whim or on a thought or on the eye test. I think there's a lot of layers of scrutiny that go through these players to get them to where they are, and for the decision to be made. And I think you're totally right about the Diaz situation, because Luis Diaz was going to be a Tottenham player, like absolutely. The talk was, yeah, they've got the meeting, this is going to be the agreement, blah, blah, blah. And then Liverpool, as I say, we've heard the stories from the inside, basically being that Porto played Tottenham a little bit. They played them. They said, yeah, that's the agreement. Yeah, handshake, we'll take that. And then as soon as they've left that meeting, they've picked the phone up to Liverpool and said, this is the deal. Will you match it? And he said, yeah. And for Porto, it makes sense for two reasons. One, it makes sense because it means that Tottenham might put their price up, but they probably wouldn't, because ultimately when you spend so long trying to negotiate a deal, it's bad faith. It's a bad faith deal that you have had a handshake deal, you've agreed on a price, and then you're then informed, well, actually somebody else is going to pay the same price as you. Will you pay me more? And we'll go, well, no, that's not what we're here for. And that's why Tottenham, I believe, walked away and Liverpool got the deal that they wanted. And it was a really important signing for Liverpool because we needed something. We've always had a small team. Jurgen Klopp likes to have a small unit, and there's a lot of minutes going into those legs every season. We've seen Jordan Henderson this season played 58 games at 63. Was huge. That's a lot of game time for one player. Mo Salah, if it wasn't for, he's had even more because he's played in the AFCON as well. A lot more miles on there. So I think it was out of necessity because of what was going on in certain competitions, but also because the necessity was there from Tottenham. They made it happen. Liverpool would have more than happily taken the time and probably bought him in the summer, like you said, Jesse. I think he was a deal that was coming in the summer.
I'm going to go ahead and answer some of these questions real quick. Starting off here, and this should answer Twisted's as well. So Twisted's was Diaz, signing of the season, Kulusevski, or Diaz. So the important thing to remember with Diaz, and this is kind of it goes back to Arsenal, the fact that Liverpool had to make the signing. Liverpool had to make the signing because if they hadn't made the signing and they ended up in the same position they were in, the question would have been, what if? Now, that's demoralizing for a fan base. It looks bad on not just Liverpool, but Klopp. It looks bad on Edwards, who's leaving, but FSG, everyone. The fact that they made the signing, they made the signing, and it still didn't work out, they can at least say, okay, c'est la vie. We move on. Next year will be our year. Kulusevski and Diaz, very comparable, similar numbers. I've already pulled them up in Discord before. I did this like a month ago, and they're very, very similar. Both great players, both incredibly effective for their respective teams. Both play very different roles. One's a starter, one's a rotational starter, kind of plays 50% of the games. But I think at the end of the day, I'll give it to Kulusevski, and Dan's going to hate me for this, but the reason why I'll give it is just because of the fact that they ended up hitting their target and getting top four. Not because he's a better player, not because he has better statistics, not because of anything else. But I think at the end of the day, as of now, I'm going to give it to Kulo because they hit their target. And Liverpool may not have made it to that point without Diaz, but I think it's one of those where at the end of the day, one totally wrapped up all like everything they wanted, and the other one didn't. Go ahead and get it.
I disagree on the side is that you've already mentioned the fact is that they've both achieved something. They both have similar numbers when it comes to goals, assists, whatever. It's neither here or there. The outside situation that doesn't get enough credit is the fact that Luis Diaz was involved in both finals. He actually was involved in all the finals. He was involved in all three finals. And that, for me, with Luis Diaz coming in and causing the problems that he did cause against Chelsea in the FA Cup and the League Cup final, he had two brilliant games there. I don't know. As you can say, I don't really mind. For me, I think Luis Diaz is an absolutely exceptional signing. I think the test of time will tell. I actually think Diaz will be clear of Kulusevski. I think if we give it a bit more time, I think we're going to see that expansion of the improvement of a player like Diaz. Kulusevski is a very good player. I just don't feel he has a ceiling as high as where Luis Diaz is going to have and where he's going to be, in my opinion. So, yeah, as I say, both been brilliant. Flip of a coin. I just feel that Diaz has been integral to a Liverpool team who have gone on and broke records, won trophies, where Kulusevski's achieved fourth. And that's no dig at them, but that was the achievement. It was fourth. And there's no trophies for fourth.
100%. And I think the most important part to my point, big up Pat, man. I think it's splitting hairs. I think you could say, and would I rather have Diaz or Kulusevski at United? I would rather have Diaz. I think he fits the profile. I obviously think he fits Ten Hag's profile more. But I think it's splitting hairs just for this season. The reason why I give it to Kulusevski is because I think it's important to recognize that without him, I don't think that Spurs hit their target. And with Diaz, do I think he's a better player? Yeah. Would I rather have him at United? Yeah. But if you're going to ask me who needed that player more, in the last 6 months of the season from January onwards, it's impossible to tell, but I'm going to give it to the one who actually hit their.
Yeah, no, I'll take that. Listen, that's fine. At the end of the day, I think some of these sort of competitions that that are kind of brought up to create some form of friction or kind of who's who. That's where we all are now. Ronaldo, Messi, Mbappe, Haaland, Kulusevski, Diaz. I'm not saying they're on that level, but it's always you've got to find a comparison. It's got to be a case of like, oh, who's better? It's like they're probably the same. They're probably both had as good of a season as the other. It's just whichever. So yeah, I mean, I was really pleased with that situation. So with that there, looking at Liverpool's Champions League, I think that's probably a good place for us to look at the Champions League. Liverpool had a good run, came up against Real Madrid in the final. What were your opinions on the final? Was this an opportunity missed, or was this just Real Madrid doing what Real Madrid do?
This is Real Madrid doing what Real Madrid do, but I also think that Liverpool were doing what Liverpool do. I think you guys had not necessarily I think you guys had a lot more opportunities. I think you guys controlled the game fairly well, but I think I think Real Madrid was very comfortable with that. And I think they knew that if they could make it into the second half, they were willing to let it get to that point, because I think in the players' minds, and someone mentioned this, by the way, in the Spanish media, I think that the Real Madrid team was really hurt. Someone inside the camp, one of the journalists came out and said they were really hurt by the fact that people were basically saying, well, Liverpool are going to win this. They're clear favorites. And you can imagine this as someone who's played the game yourself. Imagine winning the most prestigious trophy you could have possibly won at your level or at my level when I played, and not necessarily having the strongest team. Let's say you were in the middle of a rebuild and a couple of your other players had transferred to other clubs or other teams. And then people saying in the media, oh, well, Liverpool they're just going to smash them. I think that did get on some of these guys. Keep in mind, they still had a team of players who had won 4 Champions Leagues. So I think that there was a little bit there. I don't think that Real Madrid thought they were the better team. I thought that they came back even more vindictive than Liverpool did after losing the last one. I think Liverpool were the better team, but as I get chewed out about all the time, being the better team doesn't necessarily mean you get the trophy or that you deserve to win it. So it's a tough one. I think Liverpool were the better team, but at the end of the day, the winning team takes home the trophy. I didn't want Liverpool to win it, but I certainly didn't want anyone to win it. I just didn't want. I mean, Liverpool. It would have been.
It wasn't happening.
I'll be honest, but yeah,
you'd rather it wasn't happening. No, I agree with you. I'll give. I gave my take in the after the game. I hold that same energy. Liverpool had absolutely plenty of chances, and on another night, it could have been a 3-0 game, like Patrick's put in there. He's put in there, where's it 3 up in 10 minutes? I mean, if it wasn't for Thibaut Courtois, who was incredible, he was absolutely exceptional, and big up to the guy. He had an incredible game. He was the man of the match by a good way. He pulled off what he proved what he's proved as being a top world-class player. And I just feel that perhaps, I mean, we watched it together, and we were quite what's the word? I just think we looked flat. I think after we'd realised that our usual way, our chances that we created, the saves that were being pulled off, and the big situations that had occurred, I just kind of got to. They scored a typical sort of goal, which on another night shouldn't have mattered. It genuinely shouldn't have mattered. Liverpool should have been 2-3 up, and then that goal wouldn't have mattered a jot. It wouldn't have cared. It wouldn't have mattered, but it did matter. It won them the game. And Real Madrid, and as I say, this is something that really did annoy me, and you'll back me up on this one. At no point was I giving it the Billy Biggins and saying that, oh yeah, this is ours. I was saying this is Real Madrid, man. And this isn't just, it's not a hoodoo. It's not a thing. This is Real Madrid. This is absolutely Real Madrid. They knew how to win these things. They know what to do. It's Carlo Ancelotti, man. This guy has won Champions Leagues, more Champions Leagues than many, many managers have won other trophies and titles in their leagues. This guy knows what he's doing. They have an aged team. But with that age team, they're full of world-class players with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge who know what to do in the big situations. I don't think Liverpool could have done anything more. That's my opinion. I don't think Liverpool could have done anything else. I don't think you could have looked at Liverpool and said, well, you could have done this to try and score a goal. Liverpool tried everything. They did. I
think there's a couple things to that. I think, first off, you make an amazing point. Courtois had the game of his life. 110%. He makes some saves there that are just, I know how good Courtois is, but he doesn't make those for any team I've ever seen him play for before, including Madrid. He does make them, but it's not as consistent. It's not making 3 or 4 of them in the same game. I made the point, and I know that most of you will disagree with me because I think that it was it's any finals a touchy affair where you want to play your cards close to your chest. You want to make sure that you don't go out too expansively and concede a goal early and then have to come back from that. But at the same time, I thought the first half was incredibly flat. And I think Liverpool's best attribute is not letting a game go flat, punching the pace. Because if you guys had done that, I mean, it came up to halftime. And normally where you would say, and rightfully so, and you've been proved right this season, where you would say, second half, I don't think they won't be able to keep up with the pace. I said, Real Madrid will be able to do this for 90 minutes, 110%, because no one's pushing the pace. If you guys came out and really forced them to play to your guys' level, they wouldn't have had legs in the second half. There's no way an aging squad. And so I said it, and again in Discord I got shouted down. Well, it's a final, and you got it. But I'm looking at it, I'm going, Real Madrid is comfortable with this. They are. So even if they're not creating chances, and Liverpool is creating some decent chances, half chances, if you guys don't score, this is going to be a really bad second half for Liverpool. And I think I just look at it because I watch Liverpool a lot, obviously with you, Dan, and the final can sometimes get to people. I was looking at it like, if Liverpool play their game, Real Madrid doesn't stand a chance in the second half because they can't keep it up. But do that and ended up proving costly. So
no, I totally agree. I mean, we discussed a couple of things. And talking about the energy point side of things is that, I've always said Liverpool are always better than the second half, and I've been proven right constantly. Constantly. Second half, Liverpool are better. Liverpool are fitter than other teams. This, however, was a different kettle of fish. And the reason it was different is that we were playing a Real Madrid team who, for the last 3 weeks, haven't had to play because they'd won La Liga. They had done their job. We weren't playing teams like we had been in the Premier League who had been playing every week. We were already going to be tired, and just as tired as we were. We were playing a Real Madrid team who had 3 weeks of, active rest. They weren't on the beach, they weren't chilling out, but they were actively kind of conserving that energy, keeping themselves fit, keeping themselves ready for a top game. And I actually think that we were the team that was tired. We were the team that looked tired in that game because we were a team who played 63 games this season. No team had played as many games as that. And we looked it. We looked every bit of that kind of situation. And it's no excuse. It's just what it is. And it was a final which didn't go our way. On another day, it did. On another day, it would have gone our way. Liverpool would have won 6. Not 6, sorry. Yeah, I've just read somewhere else. Liverpool would have won 2, maybe 3-0, 3-1. And it would have been, hey, brilliant, Liverpool won number 7. Well, do you know what? We didn't. But what I do know is we'll be back in a final soon enough. We'll be back there in a final soon enough.
I've said it about Liverpool fans, including yourself, especially yourself. If I were going to, and I'm not going to, as a United fan, if I were going to, I would probably put down a bag in August, September, and just say Liverpool make it back to a final. And not like, honestly, I think that you guys tend to do so. What up, Pav, man?
Yeah. And that's it. Like, I can't say you got to hold that L. We didn't win it. We didn't win it. It's the way it is. But we didn't win it to Real Madrid. These things happen.
There's no shame.
They beat City. Yeah. They beat Chelsea. They went out there and did everything. I'll put on to this one there. Trent should be disappointed not to have stopped the CrossFit video. Do you know what? Yeah, it was a mistake, but it shouldn't have mattered. It shouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, and I think it's the way that people say it too. It's like when it comes from a place of actual football knowledge or people actually trying to understand what Trent did wrong there. He needs to know Vinny's over his shoulder there. That's defending 101. I've also watched that back. Robbo doesn't cover himself in glory. Neither does Virgil. People try to blame Virgil, but Virgil has to cut out a ball that's 5-10 yards away from him that he doesn't have a chance. Konate's pushing. He's in a weird position, pulled in too tight to Virgil at the time. And therefore, I mean, if you've ever played in defense, you basically want to keep a certain distance between players. The only real exception is when you have that gap where you know there's a player behind you and there's no one else around you that you need to then just go mark your man. And Trent was being lazy. Let's be honest. And he didn't. Well, he wasn't aware of it. But my point is you need to also somewhat disperse it along that back line.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's the point. Is that this is my problem. My problem is that everyone attacks Trent. Everyone attacks Trent because the fact is A, he doesn't play for other people's clubs. That's why he plays for Liverpool. Secondly, is because he always comes in and sets the standard so high, everyone's ready to knock him off his pedestal. Any moment that an error comes in, they're ready to knock him down. They can't do it with Virgil van Dijk. I remember at one point, I think there was a Twitter fan account because Nicolas Pepe had actually dribbled past him once. Like that was the thing, that they're waiting for an opportunity for the standard to drop down. It was disappointing. It was absolutely disappointing that situation occurred. But what I will go back is to say, and this is my real energy, it shouldn't have mattered. That shouldn't have happened. That goal shouldn't have mattered, because if we'd done our job at the front and scored the goals that we should have scored, if we got the 2 or 3 goals that Liverpool probably would have got on another day, that would have been that would have been the way for us, and that was just the way it is. We're up against Vinicius Jr., who had a brilliant game. In that game, he was fantastic and he did what he needed to do. I said that he doesn't have the greatest level of finishing or greatest level of output on a lot of things, and on this occasion he proved me wrong, and he scored the winning goal, and that's fantastic. But for the rest of the game, Trent and Konate had done a fantastic job keeping him quiet and keeping him away, keeping Benzema out of the situation, keeping him away from scoring goals and doing what they needed to do. I'm just going to pull up patches, but Trent absolutely stinks in defence, though. I don't think he does. I disagree with that. I think that's a little bit too much. I don't think he's as good of a defender as a number of other defenders who are right backs. However, it's a trade-off. Is what do you want from them? If what he does in certain situations is more so an attack, and it makes up for the difference. In Liverpool's setup, the attack option is behind Trent Alexander-Arnold, because that's the way that we play. It's a risk and reward situation. If we play Trent Alexander-Arnold 10 yards further back, we'll see him get found. We'll see there'll be less issues when it comes to him getting found out, or players getting in behind him. Every club says, oh, the space is in behind Trent, because that's where you can attack Liverpool, because we put him further up the pitch, because he can cross the ball incredibly well, and that's what you use players for. You play them to their strengths. So with that, Champions League, I've got no excuses. Let me just go on, mate. Yeah, crack on.
Because Carvajal did very well against Diaz, but he has still had him on his toes the entire game. One thing people keep remembering, because you only remember the mistakes, don't you? You only really remember the mistakes. Trent was cutting out balls to Vinny all game, literally all game, until that one situation where, at that point, like I just explained, the entire backline had shifted way too far over. 2 or 3 players were out of position. Robbo like missing a tackle or not getting his man. Virgil coming out in kind of a no man's land. Konate getting pulled over. Ball goes through. Trent. The entire back line was totally disorganized. The rest of the game, both Carvajal, yeah, but he's... So I don't like this, because this is a narrative that came out because of the Trent thing. Did Carvajal have Diaz in his pocket? No. Because Diaz was giving him such a rough time. I don't watch it back. He didn't keep him in his pocket. What he did was he did a good enough job to not let Diaz be 100% effective, and that was good enough for the game. But actually, I would argue that in the first half, Trent was doing a much better job on Vinny than Carvajal was doing on Diaz. So it's, I think people forget. I feel like people forget. Like they watch the game and then they forget what happened in the game 2 seconds after it finishes because you see the one mistake and it was a howler from Trent. To be fair, it was absolutely. But I think it really is.
Yeah, it is, and that was the situation, wasn't it, for Liverpool? That was the situation for us. It was a game probably too far. Patrick agreed with me when I said when it came to the fact that Liverpool were just tired. I almost felt like I was like you actually heard me on a previous one of our lounge conversations talking about the league before the FA Cup final and saying that I think actually we should have, began to rest our players because the FA Cup final and the Champions League final would have been more important. I'm not going to say I was right because ultimately I know I was. We didn't win the league. But the thing is if you're not in with a shout, and let's say City didn't win that last game of the season, then people would have come to me and said, well, you could have won the Premier League as well. So you've got to be in it to win it with all the competitions. Do I kind of sit back looking now with the gift of hindsight, the 2020 vision that it gives? Would I have liked to have seen Liverpool completely rest its 11 from the FA Cup final onwards and have a fully fit, rested squad, which we were fit, but much more rested for the Champions League final, and maybe the final result of the season would have been different. Who knows? But it is what it is. What matters is that Liverpool are in a very strong position. £580 million, most turnover ever for the club, based on off-field activities and on-field activities, which is fantastic. And big up to FSG. Big up to FSG for taking a club from administration to where they are now. And we have them to thank. That's what they have done. They brought the right managers, the right players, the right backroom staff. They've got the right business deals in place, and they're doing everything in the right way. The investment in the infrastructure of the club is incredible. The brand new training grounds, all the medical situations that they brought in respect of things that happened to Virgil van Dijk and the muscular injuries. They've listened to the experts and they've invested. That's something that FSG proved time and time again, is that they'll listen to the experts and say, you know what you're talking about, so we'll give you the cash because we'll get it back.
God bless America, John Henry, and LeBron James. Most importantly, LeBron James.
Most importantly, LeBron. That's it. Big up to LeBron. If you're watching the show, LeBron, jump on. We love you on here, honestly. But yeah, that's right. And I think that's something that, guys, if you've not seen it, Moneyball, watch that film. That will educate what we're kind of talking about. So yeah, with that, I suppose it's a good opportunity for us to look at the future just before we bring a couple of people in for the panel. Future Liverpool. Jesse, next season's expectations. What do you expect from Liverpool?
More of the same. It depends on a few things. Obviously, it depends on what sort of system Klopp decides to turn this team into, because it will need an evolution. Where is it, Twisted?
This is a good actual opportunity to bring Twisted's comments in, actually.
Where is it? Do you see it?
Just come up now.
Right
Klopp's plan B.
Yeah,
and this is a good point for you to hit.
Yeah, sorry, this is what I was looking for. I was looking too high. What is Klopp's plan B? So he had a plan A initially. He had the gegenpress, high pressing football, rock and roll, whatever you want to call it. That's what he had initially. He tuned it back a little bit, so now they do it when they need to, but they also now have that high block with players who are capable of holding the high line, where they don't get pressed through. They have Allison coming out to sweep. So now they don't need to like gegenpress as much. It's much less energy intensive. But now it's about their plan B and attack. And I think this is where a player like Darwin Nunez comes in, where now you have an actual striker. Now I've had this discussion with Dan several times over the past week about how Darwin Nunez plays. And I'm not solely convinced he's there yet, but I think under Klopp, a player like Darwin Nunez, who's incredibly raw, can help be evolved into that player. Yeah. I think the biggest question is when you're asking about what does Liverpool season look next season, as to do with what transfers they bring in, Nunez, what Klopp can do with him, And what City did, not trying to flick you guys off, what City did, which is bring in Holland. So Holland will bring in a plan B for Guardiola as well. So I think we're going to see a much improved top two next year, hypothetically. But I do think it leaves a lot in the unknown. I don't think we're going to know what this looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I'll give my kind of like insight from the, just before going to that one, we've got 7 people watching. Really appreciate it's coming on, guys. Really do. Everyone who's in the chat, everyone's in the comments. You can stick a like on for me just while I'm murdering away. I'd really, really appreciate that for you. Put your comments in. We're going to be putting the link on in the next 5-10 minutes. So if you want to jump on and give your thoughts on Liverpool's season, past, future, present, yeah, we'd love to have you on, guys. So just be ready for that. So yeah, Liverpool's transfers. I'll go on the ones which are absolutely confirmed, which is Fabio Carvalho, 7 million quid from Fulham. He is Portuguese. He is. Cheers for that, Patch. Really appreciate him, man. He counts as a homegrown player because he is, even though he's Portuguese, he has been in the country before he was the age of 18. So he will go on our quota as a English player, a homegrown player, which is fantastic. 19 years of age, a lot of talent, a lot of potential, very highly sought, very well thought of. We've done some good business there. I'll be very interested to see how he's involved in the Liverpool team, which will come into actually what which was what Jamie's put in as one of his comments about the formation change. Darwin Núñez, from number of major sources in Uruguay, who is actually followed by Darwin Núñez, was the first to release the information, was the deal is done. He's going to play for Liverpool. So it isn't signed, but someone who's incredibly close to the player has been given the authority to give that information out and has been retweeted by a numerous, top tier 1 accounts across Liverpool and also the greater field of football. Darwin Núñez, as I've said on previous streams between me and you, I would have preferred to give him another 6 months. Cheers, Flo. Appreciate you coming on. Darwin Núñez is raw. He's 22 years of age. He is younger than Trent Alexander-Arnold, if you can believe that. That's, he's very exciting as a player for me. I told you on previous ones that I was 50-50. I thought, yeah, we could sign him or we couldn't. It was kind of like if Liverpool wanted him, they would get him. If they didn't want him, they'd happily move on to somebody else. For me, is something that we needed. And going back to what Patrick said there, I think Liverpool with a proper number 9 or City with a proper number 9 probably would have done the business in competitions. Having an instinctive goal scorer, someone whose job is to put the ball in the back of the net, is not to create chances and to do this and to do that. His job is to finish the chances, to be the person the ball is delivered to and to finish them. I'm excited by the way that he plays. He has a lot of things that he needs to improve on. Some passing, some touch, certain out of play. When we're not in the possession, he'll need to work on, but that's what Klopp does. Jurgen Klopp will bring that into him. He will learn, he will improve, he will see a better player next season than the player that we've seen this season. That's a given for me. He is an absolutely incredibly clinical finisher. He can score with both feet and his head. He can score outside the box, inside the box. He can chip the ball. He can place it. He can take a penalty. He's got all those sort of natural ingredients, the raw ingredients, like Jesse's just said. And now it's time to polish and mould and create that player that clearly Liverpool, who are apparently spending £85 million on as a total of a deal, the biggest ever signing Liverpool's made, 10 million more than Van Dijk. The layers of scrutiny that Núñez would have had to have passed through would be incredible for this kind of money. FSG must have been absolutely unequivocally convinced that this was the player that they wanted. The analysts, the manager, the scouts, the involvement from people like Pep Linders, who's got a lot of involvement in Portuguese football, all must be convinced. They must be convinced that there's something there, that this isn't just a one-season wonder. that they can work with this guy and they can use his talents to take Liverpool to the next stage. I'm talking about the next stage. Could we be playing a different formation? And I'm just going to go back to Jamie's comment, and we can just find that, because I think this is an interesting one. Sorry, mate, I think you pressed it. Yeah. 4-2-3-1 would be a good formation. Like his days at Dortmund, with Fabio in the centre attacking mid and Thiago and Fabinho in the sixes. Thoughts, gentlemen? Do you know what? It could well be, couldn't it? It could absolutely well be. You can see those back four, Fabinho and Thiago, with the options of Diaz, Salah, Jota, Firmino, or even using, obviously, Fabio Carvalho with Darwin Nunez through the centre, or even Jota. There's so many kind of potential options, because Darwin Nunez can play on the left, but Jota can play up front. There's so many situations, and this could well happen. Jesse, you've got some thoughts, mate?
Yeah, I don't like that formation. See, the problem is that 4-2-3-1 is actually the same as a 4-3-3 90% of the time, because you end up playing. So if you're going to play Fabinho, he's going to be able to push a little bit forward, but he's really only going to play as a 6. What you would do is then you'd have Thiago essentially playing. You'd have like a staggered 4-3-3. So you'd have Fabinho at the base, Thiago on the right, a little bit ahead. You guys might have, this is my right here, and then you'd have someone in the 10 there.
Yeah,
who's playing really on the left. But it would be, it's really, the funny thing is, like, I feel like they're the same thing, but I don't like people to get the same impression. Like, it won't be a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 like people actually generically think, because Fabinho is not the player you want pushing forward unless he's up on set pieces and corners. So I think it's more of a 4-3-3. I don't think it's a bad idea. I also don't think you want to play Fabio in a cam yet. I think that's going to be a year off. I don't think he's ready for that at Liverpool's level. But it's a good idea. Will the formation change? I don't think so. I think Klopp will probably slowly bed in a new system. So I think it'll be an interesting one to see. I think what you'll see is more of the same, but with the same two. So like you said, Fabinho and Thiago, and then playing a little bit more with that third. That third midfielder will be interesting.
100%. I mean, what's interesting is that Liverpool fans and fans of other clubs have been quite, I don't know, everyone thinks Liverpool just play 4-3-3, which we have done for a long time. However, when Klopp came to Liverpool, we played numerous different formations. So Klopp is more than happy to play different formations if he has the right personnel to do it with. And I think it could well be, going back to a comment that Twisted had made, which was it was in response to Haaland. I don't think it's in response. I just think potentially this is the way that top level football may well be going. There may well be a shift again. We've had tiki-taka. No one plays that anymore. We've had park the bus. Not many people want to play that style of football. We played high line, 4-3-3, playing with centre attacking midfielders and creative midfielders, inside forwards, to come in and create so many chances that eventually they'll score goals. I think we may now potentially be going almost a full circle back to traditional number 9s, and that could well be, that we will potentially see a different style of play. We may not see a different formation straight away, but with the introduction of 5 substitutes, which me and Jesse will just go on to just before we go on, and I'll just cover the outgoings of Liverpool and bring a few people on. With the 5 substitutes, I think this gives greater flexibility for managers to play formation changes within games, to change the formation that will start with a 4-3-3 or start with a different way, and then make changes to cause problems for the opposition. So starting with a 4-3-3 and then changing to a different one with the personnel that you bring in. So that could well be something that may happen at Liverpool and at City. The famous words of Pep Guardiola is wait until you see what genius I am when I have 5 substitutes. That's not just going to be changing players like for like. I think that's going to be changing formation and personnel situations, which is going to cause that. So that's just my opinion when it comes to it. Who knows? It's exciting times. Another player that Liverpool are very, very closely linked with, and it looks like the deal's going to be done, is a young man called Calvin Ramsey from Aberdeen. 18 years of age, £4 million, right back. He's going to become an understudy for Trent. Very, very keen to come to Liverpool. It looks like the deal's going to be done. Fantastic young player. Can't say I've watched very much of him. Watched some compilations. And yeah, no one has. Let's not lie and let's not pretend that people do. Because unless you're an Aberdeen fan, you ain't watching Aberdeen. But using the stats out there, there's no teenager in world football who's created more chances than Calvin Ramsey. Take that what you will. You know, clearly there's something there from him. He plays a different style of football to Trent. He doesn't cross the ball so much. He's actually more of a dribbler and will take the ball closer to the box to make a pass and make a cross rather than pinging in, top quality balls. So I think we might see a difference there as well. Players that are being sold, though, that's an interesting one. I'm glad to see some of the players that Liverpool are looking at selling on. Oxlade-Chamberlain is time to go. I love the guy. Got a lot of time for him. Lot of But after the ACL injury, I don't think it was any more. I don't think it was a physical problem that caused him to be where he was. I think it was a mental problem. I think that he was never able to kind of get himself G'd up, ready to kind of climb that mountain again to get back into the Liverpool team. Liverpool gave him plenty of chances. Jurgen Klopp gave him lots of chances for him to prove himself. And that number 8 role at Liverpool, Naby Keita's position, is up for grabs. There's no other position in the team that is actually up for grabs in our team because it isn't. But that one is. Oxlade-Chamberlain's one. He had every opportunity to say, no, Naby, my man Naby, you're not having it. I'm here now. I'm coming back. I'm the £40 million man. I'm the guy who is still that before he was injured at Roma. And unfortunately, he's not been able to get back to there. So it's time to move on, sell him away. Takumi Minamino is proving me correct. He was purchased as a player who was to build a brand, good value, £7 million. He's come in, done a job, been a good squad player. And now it's time to move on. £17 million marks a £10 million increase in its value. And we've probably picked up tens of thousands of fans in that market anyway. So I think that's worked out for everyone involved. And Takumi Minamino is probably also going to, advance his career from the situation too. Nico Williams, it hasn't right worked out for Nico, I'm afraid, at Liverpool. I'm not sure why. I always rated the guy, but clearly there's something that hasn't been seen. He, again, is another player who I think Liverpool will cash in on. They're going to sell him, going to make some good money on him. Fulham are quite keen on keeping him at the club. Maybe that's where his level is. Maybe that's where his level is, lower half of the Premier League. Again, time to move on. Nat Phillips. Again, he's done his job. 15 million. It's time to move on. There's no one. The only player is Sadio Mane.
Where was Phillips this season? Nat Phillips.
Nat Phillips, who actually went to Bournemouth. He went on a loan in January, and Liverpool did quite well. They got £1.5 million from that loan deal, 250,000 extra as a bonus from getting promoted. So they've made nearly £2 million off his loan. They're very keen on selling him.
He goes back to Bournemouth, probably.
He's a Premier League quality defender, just not for us. He just isn't.
No. He's not even close to you guys.
Yeah, he's not close to the top half of the table, I don't think. He's a good lad, dependable. Kind of, he would improve a number of teams in the Premier League, and Bournemouth, I think, will be very keen on keeping him with the quality he's got. So with that, I think this is a good opportunity. We'll put the link in the chat, mate. Get anybody on if you want to come and have a chat with us about what's going on at Liverpool, give the thoughts and the feelings about anything that is going on. So, yeah, I'm not sure about other players that Liverpool are looking to bring in there. I still feel we need a midfielder. Pav won't like me saying this, but I think it'll be Jude Bellingham next year.
More than likely. I think that's already been tapped up. That's also why I think that between Diaz and Nunez, those are your guys' 2 big transfers, obviously, this year. I don't think you guys will make 2 big signings next year, especially if these 2 work out. That's a lot of expenditure. That's United levels of expenditure.
Liverpool will make one. If Liverpool make one signing, there'll be one big signing next year. That'll be it. Not two.
It gets really heavy when you start pumping out 170 million pounds on players, on two players, in essentially what would be the same window, because you know that those January resources were allocated for this summer. So
yes.
It wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be Diaz and someone else this summer, not one in January, then two more this summer, then one more next summer. So it will be interesting to see. But at the end of the day, I think that Bellingham will probably be your guys' signing next summer. But I think it's neither here nor there. I think that's future, right? So
of course. And I think that's down to, there was a really interesting comment that Jurgen Klopp actually made when it came to transfers, because I think it was in surrounding the situations going on with Haaland at the time. I know it wasn't. It was with Mbappe. And it was talking about that Liverpool can only spend money that they actually earn. And that was actually quite telling, because actually he was telling the truth. We can have Job as well, actually, Jamie. I've got no problem having Job as well. That kid's got a future as well. So Job and Jude can both come to Liverpool. I have no problem with that in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, where my points going there? Actually, I've lost my train of thought. Where was I, Jesse?
No, it's all good. We were just talking about future transfers. I don't think that you guys are going to make any more after you guys make this Nunez transfer. You guys may sneak a cheeky one in under the door, but honestly, besides that, I don't think I don't think you guys are going to make many more. I think you guys are pretty set up for next year. I think it's all going to be about preseason Klopp system and how you guys organize around that. So
just bear with me a second. To see if we can get someone to jump on, mate. Just give your thoughts. I won't be a Sam Scott to sort out 1 minute.
Yeah, no worries. Jamie, I think that for Minamino, there was he's supposed to be hopping. He's supposed to be going to Leeds. I assume you mean Taki, right? Actually, I'll just bring you on. Right. You there, Ben? Jamie.
Oh, sorry, man. I literally muted myself.
No, you're all good. With this comment, did you mean Taki Minamino?
Yeah, man, that's what I meant.
Yeah, I think where do you think he ends up? I think he goes to Leeds. I think those are the strongest leagues, plus the Jesse Marsch factor. By the same time, I'm not necessarily sure, because I don't know how strong the links are to other teams. But
yeah, I think personally the Prem. I do think he does have some talent in the Prem. I just think that just the competition at Liverpool, man, it's just so demanding, and he just doesn't really come across as that type of player that is really fussed whether they get in the first team or not. So yeah, I think personally the Prem. I think Monaco's just a outside link, just because they might potentially be in the Champions League, and that might be something he's interested in. But yeah.
100%. I wanted to save this one for Dan, by the way. I started it to make sure I could pull it up. Jesse, thoughts on Liverpool becoming bigger than United if they keep winning trophies and get that 20th and 21st title?
I had to put it in there, man.
Here's the deal. Liverpool is a bigger club than Manchester United within England. I'm pretty sure that's statistically actually accurate, but they're not a bigger global brand. As far as trophies go, Liverpool's already a bigger club. They've already won more trophies than United. So I would never want to concede that. But at the same time, technically that's true. Now, if you want to talk about who has more success, you can give Liverpool Europe. You can give us the league, the top flight league, quota. But at the same time, I think Liverpool, because of their culture and the way that they've been disenfranchised by the actual country, kind of the overall zeitgeist of Liverpool as a whole, I think that they kind of look at themselves in a certain way. And I think because of that, a lot of the country looks at them a certain way. I don't look at Liverpool as a smaller club than United. I don't look at it like that at all. So I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Dan? Yeah.
We're the same.
Yeah,
we're the same now. I mean, you did have more financial power, for many, many years than Liverpool did. However, this is that sort of realization moment that comes around. that sometimes people catch you up. You know, that it can happen over the course of a decade, which is what it has. Liverpool over the course of a decade have creeped up and United have creeped down. And we're probably at that same point now. In terms of global sort of reach and knowledge, you know, everyone knows our name around the world. Everyone knows which club's who at the end of the day, don't they? There's no difference in those two clubs. So with that, I'm very happy where Liverpool are, and we can be very proud of what we have. I think some fans came out and were, what was the word? They were a bit disappointed or apprehensive or almost sort of shocked that Liverpool would even consider spending £85 million on one player. It's madness.
There we go. The family's back in. No, I think Dan's right, and I think it's important to recognize that even though I'm really disappointed with United at this moment in time, as I should be, and the fact that I doubt where we're headed, and I honestly, I've largely fell out of love with the club just because I see them taking us for granted. I still love the club and I still respect them. I'm still proud of them. You know what I mean? So, like,
yeah, no, that's it. It's an interesting one, isn't it? But Jamie, so what do you think of where Liverpool are going when it comes to, you know, next season? What do you think's coming around? Do you see Liverpool getting better, staying where they are? Do you see them even taking a step back?
I just think personally, mate, you're going to kind of be at roughly the same level as last season. With, of course, a few little additions, you know, Calvin, Ramsey, back at right back.
Yeah.
Probably midfield is probably the main priority, mate, if I'm being honest. And that's not to say that your midfield's like trash. I mean, it's not like, you know, let's say a Brighton midfield or a Palace midfield where it's functional, you know.
Liverpool have one of the best midfields in world football as it stands right now, one of, but they're still not got the level of numbers. I don't think there's enough players, because if we lose one, we see a drop. You know, it's a big drop.
Yeah, bro. 100%, mate. That's kind of the problem we have at like Bayern at the moment, where, you know, you take Kimmich out of our team, you know, we're literally like our level goes from like around 70% to around 40%. So
yeah,
I just think a bit more quality in the midfield. I mean, it doesn't have to be like, you know, attacking number 6, attacking 8, attacking number 10. You just need like different variations of like, you know, player, you know, like Thiago. Obviously he's that, you know, midfielder that like, you know, sits deep and, you know, does them Hollywood passes. Fabinho, he's that traditional number 6 that breaks the play and, you know, keeps it simple. You've got the likes of Henderson with his leadership, you know, that's very key, you know, and you've got Naby Keita who, you know, has got the tech, the dribble, and he's just got an eye for a goal. Do you know what I mean? I mean, goals against Atletico Madrid, goals against Palace last season, I mean, you know, but yeah, bro, I just think just personal midfield really.
I'd like to see another midfielder. I would love to see this season. But one thing that Liverpool have done, and I think Jesse will say this as well, is that they've proven that they don't rush to go and get a player, you know, because they feel they need the player. Like, oh, we need a body, so let's just get a body. They've proven on times, like when it came to Konate and when it's come to, you know, certain signings like Diogo Jota coming in, that they're quite happy just to kind of say, do you know what? We'll wait. We'll wait for the right guy. So it will be interesting. I know there's some very strenuous, tenuous links with Gavi. I think Liverpool and many other clubs are being used as it stands. It's 250 million of turnover, not profits. 280 million, 580 million of turnover, which is record for Liverpool's amount of income coming in without costs, which Liverpool have got quite a lot of costs. So it's a good season. But so going back to that is Gavi has been linked. I think Liverpool would absolutely love a Gavi, but I think we're being used. I think that gets done at Barcelona. I don't think there's a problem. I think that's linked with the Frankie de Jong situation as well. I think Liverpool are doing United a big favour in actually causing problems for Gavi. Saying, listen, we'll offer you this wage. If you're not happy at Barcelona, this is the contract that's available. So I think Liverpool sign Jude Bellingham next season. That's my opinion. But it could well be wrong. But I think Liverpool will wait for the right player rather than just going out and getting a player.
Yeah, Liverpool tends to do this thing where they'll go out, use sports science, whatever you may have, their scouting network, and they'll pick 1 to 2 players. They might even pick 3. But the fact is, every single person on that list, every single player on that list will fit a profile. So if they can't get the work rate of Werner, who looked like an amazing prospect at the time anyways, if they can't get him, they'll go out and get their second choice, which will be Jota. And Jota in the Premier League so far was Prem proven, has a similar work rate, and has put up more numbers. Maybe in a better system, which you could argue that, but the fact is the profiles are not the same, but relatively the same. Both can play striker, both can play left wing.
So. No, definitely. I agree. And Liverpool's midfield actually is quite an interesting situation as we bring it up, is that it's a midfield that contains Naby Keita, Thiago, Fabinho, Jordan Henderson, Harvey Elliott would be in there, and this season for Fabio Carvalho would be deemed as a midfielder in Liverpool's scenario. So that's going to be 7 midfielders without players like Oxlade-Chamberlain and whatnot. But I think the main one for Liverpool is just having the injury issues, which would cause the problems. Naby Keita and Thiago, 2 players who have had a number of injury problems, which I'm hoping we're going to see more game time and less injury situations because of the 5 substitutions. I'm hoping that those will allow players to rest, allow Thiago to have more time, allow him to have more rest. Hopefully, the physio and the muscular situation that's been brought in by Liverpool, which has proven to work wonders with Joel Matip, uninjured all season, a player who was riddled with injuries for years. Hopefully that can have an effect on those players going forward to be able to mean that they're actually available more often. So we'll have to see. I'd rather Liverpool make the right signing and wait than buy the wrong player and miss out on the right target next season. I think it's a case of biding your time. And again, this is what Liverpool will do. So we'll have to wait and see, won't we? We will have to wait and see.
January also does still exist, so it's not the end of the world if you don't get your first or second target. There are a lot of things happen. If we don't get Frankie de Jong and he doesn't get played a lot, and Barcelona freezes him out and decides not to register him, and he sits in a very precarious position, we'll have more competition in January. But let's just say we didn't get him and had to move on right now, which doesn't look like that's going to be the way that this transfer goes as of today. But the fact is, if we had to, you can always wait another 6 months. Like, the opportunities are there. So
100%, yeah. And I think that's the right way to look at it, is that it's not right to do the wrong deal at the wrong time. You need to do the right deal at the right time, and that's what's most important. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, the window opened yesterday, 11 o'clock. We'll have to wait and see. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of clubs who've got a lot to do with business. Liverpool appear to be doing their business quite early. I genuinely think Liverpool have all of their business done before pre-season. I don't see that not happening. I think Liverpool have everything done before then, and we won't see any other people being brought in later at a later date. But with that, Jesse, I think I'm happy for us to wrap up the show. I've really enjoyed this one. I've really enjoyed having people coming on, having the comments. Jamie, really appreciate you coming in and having a chat with us. I think we had a really interesting show. I think it's been entertaining. We had a good laugh. And we have a special bonus episode, don't we, Jesse, on Monday, which we're going to cover Newcastle. We're going to cover Newcastle, not because they're a big six club, but because I think they've got a lot of interesting situations that need to be discussed, how we think they're going to do next season, the implications of the money being brought in. You know, are they going to bring in the right kind of players? And we'll wait and see, won't we? We'll see what happens. But with that, thanks very much for tuning in. If you could put a like and a subscribe, if you want to be involved, please give us a message. We're always here. But until next time, been Dan, Jesse at Talk Football. Thanks very much, and we will see you later, guys. Thanks very much. Take care.
Jamie, love you, crab. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.